Well, the figures may shock you, as they shocked me. The most dangerous are, as to be expected, the fossil fuels. Coal tops the figures with 100,000 deaths per petawatt hour, then oil at 36,000, then biomass with 24,000 deaths, natural gas at 4,000. And that's not factoring in the millions of deaths each year as a result of the air pollution from all of these sources. But it's the carbon neutral energy sources that have the most interesting figures. Hydro, 1,400. Also, hydro secretly produces quite a large amount of CO2. Solar, 440 deaths, and wind, 150. Although there are no completely reliable data sources for wind turbine deaths, more data is needed here. It's what's at the very bottom of the list, however, that may shock you. Nuclear is just 90 deaths per petawatt hour, and that includes Chernobyl, Fukushima, and 3 Mile Island. Nuclear energy has a really bad public image. It's no surprise, with its association with nuclear warheads and Chernobyl, but you can't ignore statistics. And it is statistically the safest form of reliable power production we have today. Nuclear energy and negative press go together like Greenpeace and propaganda. And so there are many countries that have been decommissioning nuclear reactors in favour of renewable sources. But in an ironic twist of fate, nuclear may just be the energy source that could save our planet. Nuclear fission is big and scary, but it has so many benefits that cannot simply be ignored. Nuclear power plants produce 0 carbon emissions. Their only byproduct is nuclear waste, but unlike byproducts of all the other forms of energy production, this is 100% contained and doesn't leak out into the environment. Nuclear waste can also be recycled and reused in reactors multiple times. It's important to note, however, that the uranium mining and enrichment processes do use fossil fuels, and this does produce a lot of CO2. But when we average it out over a power plant's life cycle, a single nuclear reactor and all its related industries produces a median of 65 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. That's roughly the same amount of CO2 produced by wind farms over their life cycle, taking their manufacturing and regular maintenance into consideration as well. But nuclear's carbon footprint could be even lower than wind. Allow me to expand. Since 1987, Russia and the US have been mutually decommissioning their nuclear warheads. Even if recent political hiccups have put a spanner in the process, every year old nuclear warheads are still regularly retired and decommissioned. This creates a steady influx of already highly enriched uranium fuel that can be used in nuclear power plants to create energy, completely bypassing the uranium mining and enrichment processes, and thus bypassing CO2 emissions altogether. Skeptics believe that nuclear power plants lead to nuclear weapon proliferation. But, in fact, it's the complete opposite. The absolute best way to reduce the number of nuclear weapons in the world is by building more nuclear reactors. In 2013, 19% of the world's nuclear energy needs were fueled by uranium-235 from decommissioned nuclear weapons. Let's take a look at 2 real-life countries that have taken completely opposite paths when it comes to energy. Germany has invested heavily into renewables and has decommissioned 17 of their nuclear reactors, and Merkel's government pledged to remove all of their nuclear reactors by 2022. So today, only 6% of Germany's power comes from nuclear. At the opposite end of the scale, France has invested heavily in nuclear as its primary source of power. They currently have 58 active reactors, and more than 80% of France's energy needs are met by nuclear. By far the highest per capita in the world. The result? Germany's CO2 emissions per capita are double that of France. And French households enjoy a much lower energy cost as well. They pay only €0.1799 per kilowatt hour. Germans pay almost double that for their electricity, €0.3 per kilowatt hour. The second highest in Europe. Notably, Germany's energy costs have increased by 50% since starting their big push towards renewables. I'm not trying to actively disparage renewables. I think they have an important part to play in saving the planet. but I believe it should be a far smaller part than what we are currently aiming for, if for no other reason than to not see our world's beautiful landscapes littered with gigantic obnoxious windmills, not if there is no overwhelming benefit over the alternative. Humanity's cleanest, cheapest form of energy has been right in front of us since the 40s, and until nuclear fusion comes along, we should be investing more in nuclear fission to prevent greenhouse gases without needing to destroy thousands of square miles of our beautiful planet.
As to the nuclear power plant, that is a big tragedy. Dahil pinulitika ito noong 1986 that was supposed to produce 600 megawatt. Kung natuloy yung Bataan Nuclear Power Plant, yung power crisis natin in the 80s and the early 90s, hindi nangyari yun. Dahil yun talaga eksakto, halos eksakto, ang kulang natin sa kuryente at that time was 600 megawatt. Yung Bataan Nuclear Power Plant na binabatikos nila, gumawa sila sa Korea ng equivalent. Ganun din. Yung parehong design ng Westinghouse, dinala sa Korea, binili ng Korea. Sa ganda ng takbo sa Korea, 7 na ang kanilang ganong klaseng nuclear power plant. So,